This is The Wire for 2300 Zulu, November 25th, 2024. Precedence is routine. Information cutoff is 2200. Bottom line up front. Tensions remain high throughout Europe. NATO statements raise concerns. Beginning with international events, in Europe, tensions remain high throughout the continent as the diplomatic situation with regards to Russia continues to deteriorate. Germany has reportedly begun the process of examining the potential to use underground metro stations as air raid shelters in the event of war, continuing the trend throughout most European nations to reignite wartime planning efforts. A few days ago, many American legacy media outlets, mainly the New York Times, reported that the White House has considered giving Ukraine nuclear weapons as a means to dissuade Russia from using nuclear weapons on the battlefield. Analyst comments for this wire. If the claims of discussions to arm Ukraine with nuclear weapons are even remotely true and not met with an outright and immediate denial by the White House, serious escalations could be upcoming. Granted, an opinion piece by the New York Times is hardly an accurate indicator of anything at all, but due to the Biden regime's constant reliance on floating ideas unofficially through the press to test the waters, unfortunately the unnamed officials constantly quoted by all legacy media must be paid attention to some degree, especially when exceptionally preposterous ideas that are outside the bounds of normalcy come about. Taking the idea itself out of the equation, the simple insinuation of such is exceptionally dangerous, even when shrouded in journalism. Russia would not hesitate to deploy strategic forces in a posturing role just to face down a rumor such as this. Merely admitting to even discussing giving Ukraine nuclear weapons would be an exceptionally grave escalation at a time where both the White House is either incapable or unwilling to see the impact of their actions, but also Russia being unable to convey the seriousness of the situation to the West. Both sides simply believing the other will back down, even when both sides have proven they won't, usually results in very serious escalations on the international stage. This morning, one of NATO's more senior officials, Admiral Rob Bauer of the Netherlands, made headlines with his statements urging businesses throughout Europe to, quote, be prepared for a wartime scenario. Of course, anytime a high-ranking NATO official issues such statements, concern is distributed by legacy media. Ideas like this have been amplified following Russia's use of an IRBM in combat, along with many NATO members increasing their civil defense efforts. However, the most interesting facet of Admiral Bauer's statements come from the context of what he was speaking about. He was mostly speaking in terms of sabotage, cyber attacks, and energy needs. Even more specifically, he was voicing concerns regarding Russia's growing relationship with China, and that relying on a China-centric logistical enterprise may not be the best idea for business owners. He was not speaking in reference to the recent developments in Ukraine, but rather the logistical problems that will arise as Europe attempts to continue a continent-wide war, while keeping things less kinetic than an open conflict, but also without actually admitting that they are more or less in a state of war already. Perhaps as a way of balancing out the very serious escalations being undertaken throughout Europe, most of the negative statements and atmospherics throughout the continent are purely posturing attempts by NATO to remain relevant as political regime change is carried out in the United States, and potentially in the United Kingdom via growing inklings of a general election. Russian posturing efforts remain motivated largely by their strategic goals in Ukraine, and waiting for the Trump regime to take office. The Biden regime knows this, and probably is taking the opportunity to sow as much chaos as possible before Inauguration Day. However, the lengths that both powers will go to in order to project power during a time of global instability is rather concerning nonetheless. This concludes The Wire for 2300 Zulu, November 25th, 2024.